Troy here from TnT on the Streets asking, what's the worst costume you've ever worn?
Hey there. So Edgar wants to know, this is Edgar, what your worst Halloween costume ever was.
I was a sad clown.
Okay.
So what's the worst costume you ever wore? I mean, think back to your childhood and one of the worst costumes.
My mom made me be a clown once when I was a little kid. And that is the worst Halloween, because who wants to be a clown for Halloween unless it's a creepy clown? But it wasn't. It was a funny clown.
You remember as a kid, what was like the worst costume your mom threw you in this plastic thing?
I want to say the worst and the best. I love Spider-Man, but my mom bought me that cheesy Spider-Man mask with that weird string in the back that hurt like when you snapped one. And then I never forget, we were going trick-or-treating and I had to wear a jacket. And I remember the conversation I had with my mom that Spider-Man does not wear a jacket.
What is the worst costume you've ever worn?
Silliest I ever did was go as a clown with one of those wigs and big bonky nose, and oh man.
What is the worst Halloween costume you wore as a kid?
I was an unelaborate pumpkin as a child.
What's the worst costume you ever wore?
Frankenfurter.
Are you serious? She did Rocky Horror Picture Show. So what costume, what was your worst costume you ever had to wear? Like, think back whenever you were a kid.
Probably a witch costume.
Yeah? Did you have to wear a coat over top of it because it was cold or something?
Yes.
So what is the worst Halloween costume you've ever worn?
One year I went as an incognito witch in my civilian clothes to stay under the radar but still get candy.
What is the worst Halloween costume you wore as a kid?
My worst costume was a homemade Polly Pocket costume.
What was the worst costume that you had to wear when you were a kid?
It wasn't when I was a kid, it was when I was in college. And it was a clown jester that had a skull face and this weird hat piece to it, and it was just embarrassing. I was the only one that dressed up at the party.
It's Dan. What is the worst costume that you ever had to wear?
The worst? Probably a dinosaur when I was like 8. I hated it. I hated it.
Hey there, so what is the worst Halloween costume that you wore as a kid?
Well, actually, there was one I remember being slightly uncomfortable. I remember when I was younger, I actually dressed up as one of the guys from Duck Dynasty and I was wearing a fake beard. That was not too pleasant, but it was pretty funny though.
What was kind of the worst costume you ever had to wear?
A baby.
You dressed up like a baby?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
What is the worst Halloween costume you wore as a kid?
My mom made me dress as Rainbow Bright when I was 6 years old. I was not bright at all.
So what was the worst costume you ever had to wear? Like, think back to your childhood.
Like the weird princess outfits that I wore, like a bridesmaid dress or flower girl dress, and then had the plastic mask on.
Thanks for haunting with us again this week. And you know what? We'll see you next week.